Joining me today is Medcircle host Kyle Kittleson. Kyle is the engaging on-camera host for Medcircle. He's here to discuss preventative mental health care as well as continuing education for mental health care professionals on Medcircle's unique community. Medcircle provides access to the world's greatest minds in mental health through engaging interview-style video series, virtual live workshops, and in-depth articles on important mental health topics. He shares how becoming mentally health literate can help you recognize issues earlier, support others more effectively, and make smarter decisions when it comes to treatment, therapy, and medication. Kyle is skilled at translating complex topics into accessible, engaging conversations. And he's also a former marine mammal trainer. So we're going to have to ask him about that too. Welcome to the show, Kyle. How are you this morning?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. By the
Well,
way, best last name I've ever heard of, Zox. Just
yeah.
fantastic.
Thank you. I like it too. My ex-husband's name. But let me tell you, I kept the name. I love it. Yeah,
That's right.
good. Okay, so we're going to be talking about MedCircle. I don't know that, I mean, I know you're a host, you're popular, you're on air, but not everybody's heard about MedCircle. So first
Yeah.
tell us, yeah, let's start with that.
Yeah, Medcircle is a preventative mental health education platform. And it's a community of people, both professionals and, people like me who are interested in staying connected and educated on the topic of mental health and psychology. My role is to interview the doctors, and I can say that we work with some of the best doctors in the entire world. Some of our doctors are Dr. Judy Ho, who's appeared all over the place on a variety of things, Dr. Romney, who's really my final word on narcissism. Narcissism has been a big topic for us over the last few years. Good or bad, it's kind of petering out a little bit. It's not as popular as it used to be, but still very significant. And so I
Which
interview all
is
these
interesting because I think there are more narcissists. I don't know if there are more narcissists today, but there are more of them who have platforms. But anyway, we can talk about that. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
certainly, certainly. There's probably more light on narcissism than there ever has been. I think even 10 years ago, people didn't even point and say, "Oh, that's a narcissist," and now people are coming to getting the education they need to say, "Oh, yep, my mother-in-law, she's a narcissist. I realize this now."
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But anyway, okay, but that's not a clinical diagnosis, right?
Well, narcissistic personality disorder is a clinical
Yeah.
diagnosis. It's one of the personality disorders. But, it's hard to get a narcissist into a therapy room to get a diagnosis in the first place. And certainly you can have patterns of narcissism and not fit the disorder, the criteria for the disorder. So we get really hung up on diagnoses like, what do I have? And am I truly anxious? Am I truly depressed? I go, look, whether you meet criteria for a disorder or not, look at your symptoms. We can still handle those, treat those, understand those to make changes. You don't have to have a disorder to, do something.
Well, that's what I mentioned in the intro, and let's talk about that because one of the things, obviously, that you do, you help recognize issues early. Like you said, you don't have to wait till you are diagnosed
Yeah.
as being narcissistic or anything else, but you recognize the issues early, and that's critical. So we are talking about preventative medicine in mental health, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean the
Yeah.
big thing I say is, yeah, we can look at it for ourselves, of course. But I go, if you are dating, okay, and you do not have an understanding of some fundamental psychology concepts like attachment theory, concepts like all 10 personality disorders. If you aren't really just even at the fundamental level looking into those, you're dating kind of blind. It's the person who comes to me and they go, well, why do I end up with the same guy over and over and over again? I go, well, let's look
Yeah.
at that. Why do you end up with the same
And
guy over and over and over again? One of the reasons is you haven't looked at what is meaningful to you, what your attachment style is. You haven't looked at your past and your history on why you would make those decisions over and over and over again. The answer is there. The answer is there. You're not magically ending up with the same guy. The answer is there. And I think an education in psychology and mental health gets us there. And I'll add this, Kathryn. So many people think they're either educated on mental health because they watched a Netflix documentary one time and now they're educated on mental health, or they think I don't need to be educated on that. I got the rest of my life going on. And I was in that second group for years and years and years. And I was in therapy since I was 9 years old. And then when I joined Medcircle, the first day I'm interviewing a therapist and they go, yada, 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 CBT. And I said, hold on, stop. What's CBT? And they said, cognitive behavioral therapy. And I said, well, I've never heard of that. And they said, you've been in therapy since you were 9 and you haven't heard of CBT? I said, no. And I go, that is part of the issue, is that even someone like me who's been in therapy since they were 9 years old still never got that psychoeducation. And that psychoeducation is the lighter fluid to getting your life back, to getting confidence, to walking through the world going, aha, I can point out a narcissist. I can spot the signs of depression and anxiety in myself and my loved ones. I have these tools where I can move through the world confidently because knowledge really is power.
So Kyle, who got you into therapy at 9 years old and why?
Well, my parents did, thankfully. I guess that would have been the only option for me to get into therapy. I
Right.
was I was a I would say I was a depressed child. And I people looking in would go, what do you possibly to be depressed about? And I certainly have my own theories. I've been in therapy since I was 9. I certainly have some theories by this point, but I had some theories. And what was really interesting is, I was 9, so this is the early 90s. And the stigma, especially for parents back then, to put your child in therapy. And then I got put on Prozac. So I'm 9 years old. I'm on Prozac. I'm in therapy. A lot of parents would have felt too much guilt, too much shame, too much embarrassment to have their child go through all of that. But I really think it allowed me to live, because I remember 6 weeks after I started therapy and I started Prozac, it was like I could breathe, and it was like I walked around my family going, "Oh my gosh, these people are awesome. They really love me. I feel supported. My teachers are cool. Oh, my friends are really great." It's like I finally got to start seeing my life at 9 years old.
So kind of like a veil was lifted and
Oh,
that,
that's the perfect metaphor.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, depression.
Yeah, depression. And look, I take Prozac, I take Abilify every day. I'm still in therapy, but I think what's helped me more than the therapy, and I'm certainly thankful to all my therapists that I've had and psychiatrists. But what's helped me more than anything is the psychoeducation piece. It really brings peace to you, because a medication can lift you out of some of those symptoms so you can see clearly. And talk therapy is a great place to get everything out of your head onto the table and have this great third party help you walk through all of your memories and your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions. But if you then back that up with some basic education, now you're really firing on all cylinders. And I think that's where most people miss it. They go, but I'm in therapy. I am medicated. I am taking my stupid little mental health walk. I drink enough water. I'm sleeping enough. My diet's good. I don't have it still. I just feel stuck. I go, that's because we haven't like done the work. And when people say doing the work, for me, that is the learning part. What is that SSRI you're taking? Where does really depression come from? And can you, even as the person who's maybe been diagnosed with depression or anxiety, can you really tell the difference between when your depression's kicking in versus when you're having a bad day, or when your anxiety is debilitating rather than just pushing you forward through, part of your day that has a little anxiety to it? And so getting again that education is just, I can't overemphasize it, Catherine. It's like, I mean, you're a social worker with the microphone. Love that tagline, by the way.
Yes.
It's
Thank you.
like that. Think how much faster your work would go if the person came in with just a little education on the psychoeducation point of what they're going through.
Oh, how do you get them there? Okay, you're talking about before you go to the social worker, before you go to the psychologist, psychiatrist, et cetera. How, or in the beginning of the interview, you were talking about like people who are dating and dating the same
Yeah.
guy over and over again. And
Yeah.
most people find their dates now online, Tinder, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So before they do that, how do you get them to have or to get this health literature and become smarter and make smarter decisions? Yet I'm going way back before they even get in taking the pills, getting into therapy.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I say that mental
listen to
health.
your show.
Yeah.
Listen
Listen to
to
the Kathryn
Kyle's
Zox
show.
show and then
Yeah,
listen to the Medcircle show.
that's
Exactly.
right.
Well, certainly, I think just perusing our YouTube channel, we have 1.7 million subscribers there. We got hundreds of videos. We do new videos every week. That's a great place. But the the key is really mental health for me is another word of life. It's just life. So, what part of your life requires a little maintenance, a little bit of viewer? You got to look at that, uncover it a little bit. What part of that life is it for you? And if it is, let's say something broad like, it's romantic relationships. All of the romantic relationships I've been in, the person I can't get over. I always think they're cheating on me. All right. Now we have something more specific that's relevant to you that you have some interest in infidelity in relationships, and your inability or non-desire to say, hey, you're in this relationship with me and I don't think you're cheating, but there's a part of me that does think you're cheating and I just can't get over it. We have something we can actually go at. And then this is easy, y'all. You can do this. Then you find the expert on that topic and you just listen to them for a little bit in the car, in the morning, at night, whenever you find that little period of time and you listen to that expert. And what's going to happen is maybe for the first 5, 10, 15 minutes, you're like, this is boring. I don't want to listen to, infidelity talk by some expert who doesn't know my personal situation. Hang in there, because eventually you're going to start getting little tidbits and little moments of going, oh my gosh, I do that. Oh my gosh, I don't do that. Oh my gosh, that's a pattern for me. And as that starts to piece together, the answers don't come, the questions do. And the questions are so powerful. The why do I do that? Or how could I have done that differently? And when those questions come, now we know the question we need to answer, and how you find your answer is up to you. Of course, I'm biased and I think Medcircle is the best place to get that answer. We've developed so many solutions on our platform to get you those answers. But first, it's coming up with those, finding something you're interested in, figuring out what those questions are so that you can go get those answers. Now, as a blanket statement, I think everybody should have a very basic understanding of all 10 personality disorders. Because even if you meet somebody who does not reach full criteria for those personality disorders, again, who cares? I'm more symptom based than diagnostic based. Because if you have an overview of what some emotional dysregulation might look like, or some abandonment fears might look like, that's what an education on personality disorders are. And when you go into the world with your friends, with your loved ones, and like I said, I go, Medcircle is like the ultimate dating platform if you're single, because you're going to get to those dates, that first date, you're going to have a conversation instead of going, oh, well, he was a pretty nice guy. And yeah, that was a little weird that he said that thing about his ex-wife and his family and his kids, but I'll see him again. You're going to have an education that says, aha, there's a lot of abandonment here. There's massive insecurity. There's a little bit of a grandiose thinking. And I just know that those are not qualities that I'm interested in. And you don't have to go on a second date with this guy, because now you're educated to the signs. You're informed on the signs. And so I think if you really don't know where to start, just tackle one of the 10 personality disorders. And again, not because you need
But
to
I'm going to
avoid
interrupt you
somebody.
because what if you are one of those people? You're the one who has the personality disorders. You keep getting into these relationships because you have abandonment issues
Yeah.
or you have fear of intimacy. So you keep doing the same. Maybe the person that you're engaging with is a good guy or a good gal or whomever, but you're the one with the problem.
Yeah, it's not you, it's me. I
Yes.
say, how fabulous, how fantastic. There are many people I've talked to who were in a relate. I mean, I would say hundreds at this point, who were in a relationship. Okay, they go watch a video or a series on narcissism, and then they go, whoa, 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 whoa. Am I the narcissist? Maybe it wasn't this guy I was dating. Maybe it's me. I'm the narcissist. And I go, first of all, what a beautiful thing to even consider because you're looking at yourself. I think it's great when people look at themselves, even in a critical light like that. And two, let's say you are a narcissist. Let's say you do have abandonment issues or you can't regulate your emotions. How great is it to know that? To know that it's not unique to you, you're not alone. To know that these issues do exist and you have them, and to know that there is a solution for them. Finding problems, ooh, that's such a win. That's such a win. Now, fixing the problem is the hard part. It's much harder than finding the problem. But
So
to know in the first
maybe
place is
some of
fabulous.
these things that what you're talking about, maybe they should be on date, when they have these dating sites, because I have a lot of friends who are on these dating sites and all they put down is I love to travel, I love to go to restaurants, I love, walk on the beach, that kind of stuff. Maybe
Mhm.
what you're talking about, here are the 10 personality disorders. Do they apply to you or to someone you might be dating?
Here's a test for them. Yeah.
That's
And I think one of the big personality disorders, I would say second to narcissism is borderline personality disorder.
yeah, that's
In the mental health
serious.
space, it's so stigmatized.
Hmm.
But it's stigmatized by professionals, it's stigmatized by people living with it, it's just stigmatized all over the place. But again, even if you don't reach that full criteria, I think there's 9 components to borderline personality disorder. Even if you have one or two and they're not fully severe on the spectrum, that's really great insight to know. For example, I had and probably still have major control issues. Like they're an issue where if I don't feel in control, I feel unregulated. And I didn't realize I had control issues until I was listening to one of my interviews, which is so funny. And then I realized, whoa, 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 that's me. I have
Yeah.
major control issues, and it's actually been holding me back all of these years. And so to point out our flaws is a great gift because it gives us the road to the answers. So I can say today that I recognize my control issues, and even just that recognition allows me to, move through them I'd say more gracefully. You know what I
Okay,
mean?
well, now I'm not going to let you get away with that because
Yeah,
what are
don't.
your well, I want to know what are those control issues? And you said it was just recently that you discovered, I have control issues. Where and how?
Yeah, probably 2 or 3 years ago. Um, it was it was a heated discussion with somebody that is very important to me. And in that, after that discussion, and I knew I needed to cool off from the discussion, I was thinking about it. And of course, we all do this. We go, they're wrong and I'm right,
Yeah.
and they're so stupid, and I can't believe they're so stupid, and all these things. Well, once I cooled off, I go, now look at this more unbiasedly. Let's challenge some of these previous thoughts you had, Kyle. And I go, whoa, 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 when I really feel my body, and this is a big part, y'all. If we hear about mindfulness and tuning into ourselves, and most people roll their eyes, and I was one of those too. But when we're really mindful, you can notice things about what your body's doing, not your mind, but what your body's doing. And in that conversation, when the control left me and it went to that other person, I was giving up control. All of the anxiety and anxiousness I felt pulsating through my body, even as I remembered it, not just when it was happening, when I was recalling it. I go, and then this happened and I lost all my control. All these emotions came in. And then I go, and that happened and I got the control back. Ooh, peaceful again. And how did I live 36 years, let's call it, with having these emotions of anxiety correlated to whether or not I had control over the scenario, control over the relationship, control over the business, pick a topic. And that hurts you, but you don't even know you're getting hurt because you're just go, 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 next thing, next thing, next thing. And when you have those moments of, let's just call it a bad moment, conflict, well, maybe not in the moment because the conflict's happening, but afterwards, if you can calm yourself down with some breathing, you can really look at what happened as unbiasedly as possible, which is really difficult, but as unbiasedly as possible. And then remember and feel how your body was responding. You can see what your quote triggers are. And think how many times a day where control comes up where I was having an anxiety response to it. Now I don't have that as much because simply of being aware by it. It didn't even require that much work afterwards. It was just the awareness. But Kathryn, control is just one of my many issues. Okay, I got plenty.
Oh, let's hear about them. I mean, but control, I think, is an issue. Maybe perhaps just in this culture, it's kind of a cultural thing as well as individual. I think wanting to stay in control, and in instances like yours, you're talking about a relationship, but just in any instance with, whether you're doing something in the grocery store and someone doesn't treat you properly, right, or everybody wants to be in control. But my question is now 3 years. That was 3 years ago. So do you still have the same relationship with this person, or has all your relationships just gotten better and better?
I still have the same relationship with this person. I mean, we speak multiple times a week. So I think it's all good there. It's the control part really correlates to the real work I've done, which is an empathy. I think
Empathy. Okay.
yeah, empathy and control, those two things certainly have a relationship with one another. And Kathryn, I was not an empathic person 10 years ago. Now, I had some empathy. I wasn't a sociopath, but I certainly wasn't the guy you called if you were in tears, because I would probably say, "Why are you crying? Like, what's wrong? Let's get to the point. Let's get over it. Let's find a way to fix this. I
Mhm.
don't need to sit here and tell you and listen. I'm not good at that." And Dr. Ramani goes, that's probably this was in an interview. I did a interview where Dr. Ramani, who's a clinical psychologist, interviewed me to see if I was a narcissist. And in that discussion, she brought up empathy because, spoiler alert, narcissists tend not to be empathic. And I admitted to it. I said, I don't show up empathically like I probably should or could. And she said, has that caused issues in your life? And I go, oh yeah, lots of issues. People don't like blunt Kyle as much. She goes, well, then if you wanted to work on it, you could. And I said, well, how do you, I'm 30 something. How do you work on becoming empathic? Like, shouldn't I have already learned that? She goes, no, a lot of people don't. And she goes, here's how you learn. You practice it. I said, well, how do I practice empathy? And she said, you practice it when it doesn't matter. And I said, give me an example. She goes, you're on a flight and some guy sitting next to you turns to you and goes, starts talking to you. What do you do? And I go, well, I put in my headphones and open my book because I don't want to talk to this guy. She goes, right. But remember, we're practicing empathy. So you need to talk to this guy. I go, okay. And so you listen to this guy and you listen to his stories and you imagine what it's like for him and you put yourself in those shoes and you practice and you go deep and you really give it your all and you do it for that guy because that guy doesn't matter. You're never going to see him again. But you practice with him so that when your good friend calls you, you're not practicing on your good friend. You've already gotten at least one rep under your belt. And if you continue to do this, it will become easier and easier and easier. And so after I huffed and puffed and rolled my eyes, I decided to practice my empathy. And I did every chance I got, whether it was on the phone, whether it was in person, at a bar, at a restaurant, with my friend's friend. We've all been at a cocktail hour where somebody's complaining to you about their experience at the dry cleaner that day. And you're like, I don't care about your experience at the dry cleaner, but those are the chances for you to practice. And I can tell you, I'm an empathic person. It has reshaped how I interact with everybody in my life.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up because I
Yeah,
have the opposite problem. I am empathic when the guy sitting beside me on the plane, and I sit there and I listen and I don't really want to listen.
yeah,
And I can't say no and put on my headphones. And so I'm listening, or all the examples that you gave.
yeah.
I
Because you're
mean,
a social worker, of
yeah,
course.
but
You're meant to.
it
You're
gets
in
in
that.
the, but Kyle, it gets in the way. I mean, in the same way that you're not being empathic gets in the way. You can't sit and listen
Mm,
to everybody's problem. Well, you can all the time. So,
yeah.
okay, You're
Yeah, and
the
I think and you shouldn't. And that's why, I did a little live stream last night for our community members every week that we do this little chat where we just sit around and we chat. That's all we were talking about. And this guy was sharing that he's going through all this trauma from his family. And I said, look, people, I often find, I'm not a doctor, y'all, by the way. I go, but I often find that when people have experienced trauma, especially from other people, they struggle setting up boundaries. And so boundaries come into play very quickly for those of us who maybe are too empathic. But I also think that boundaries is another way to show empathy, because if I want to keep you in my life, mother-in-law, I
yeah.
cannot just listen to you all the time, every second, all the time. It's not going to work. I have to have a boundary in place, and that boundary is to keep us going, to keep this relationship going. And so that's what I mean about doing the work. It all leads to one thing, right? One day you're too empathic and you need to set up boundaries, and then you're setting up boundaries and you realize you don't have good boundaries because someone screwed you over when you were a kid. And it just keeps going and going and going. And they're all opportunities to optimize your life. If you wear a Fitbit, if you wear an Aura ring, if you watch how much sleep you get and how much water you drink, you're already doing this. You're already looking for ways to improve your life. Now, let's just look at some psychoeducation, and then you'll really be firing.
Don't you think boundaries are, as yours, I mean, we only have a couple minutes left, but boundaries really are the key. Isn't that it? Isn't that I think that's kind of like the overall, I don't know what you would call it, but if we can keep healthy boundaries, then all the other stuff kind of fits in the middle, and we can overcome all the things that we've been talking about, lack of empathy, too much empathy, all of those things. If we can
Yeah,
maintain
and
these
and then
emotional boundaries.
yeah, and enforcing them, because we all go to bed and we all dream about our boundaries. We go, that's what I'm going to do. That's how I'm going to do it. And I go, that's great, but now you got to do it. And the action is very different. And so keeping in mind that enforcing the boundaries takes practice and work, but when you do it, your relationships get closer, they get better, they don't get more fragmented and far away.
Exactly. That's a good, I guess, lesson to end on. I could go on and on with you. Obviously, you have so much to say. Medcircle. Okay, so give us, what, as I said in the beginning,
Yeah, of course.
platforms to go to, more information about you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're dipping your toes into the psychology realm, the MedCircle YouTube channel is a great place to start. If you're ready to actually get supported, find your community, learn from the best, and have resources at your fingertips on virtually every mental health topic there is, then forget the YouTube channel, go to medcircle.com and you can review our membership offerings. We have them for professionals and for students and for people like me who just want to learn. And I believe Kathryn will have some discounts or something in the show notes of this podcast, so your viewers can get a discount on memberships.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for being on the show today. Obviously, it was great talking to you. Lots of good information. There's more information out there, as Kyle said. Go to MedCircle, listen to his show. MedCircle host Kyle Kittleson. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Joining me today is David Knapp, author of Decoding GLP 1, a guide for friends and family of those on the pen. GLP 1, and I'm not going to give you the scientific name, but maybe I will, glucagon-like peptide 1, treatments for weight loss have been gaining a lot of attention recently, especially with medications like Wegovy and Manjaro. These treatments are part of a class of drugs originally designed to treat type 2 diabetes, but they've shown remarkable effects in promoting weight loss as well. Dave Knapp reveals how GLP-1s are changing lives in broader, profound ways. He delves into the history, science, and accessibility challenges of these treatments, offering insight into the emotional and social realities of living with obesity. Through personal stories from the On the Pen community, he showcases real life triumphs and struggles, illustrating the transformative potential of GLP 1 medications beyond just weight loss. Dave's work has been featured in Fortune, Bloomberg, Yahoo Finance, and Business Insider, which solidifying him as his role as a trusted advocate and storyteller in the space. Welcome to the show, Dave. Nice to have you on.
Thank you, Kathryn. It's nice to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about my favorite topics with anyone who will listen. So thank you for
Well,
having me.
everyone's listening. Thank you for being here. It's been a struggle for both of us to get online together, but we did it. Okay, so this is a topic I think everyone I know is interested in this topic. First of all, obesity, type 2 diabetes, all of these which involve all these emotional and physical challenges, right?
Right.
And I know you've been through this yourself, right?
Yeah.
This is all of this work has come from your own experience. So maybe we should start with that.
Yeah. Well, my story is, I think, like many people who struggle with the disease of obesity, and do use the word disease. Some people struggle with that. We can get into that certainly if you'd like. But for the greater part of my adult life, have been chasing some early success at controlling my weight in my young adulthood. When I started the Atkins diet to try to get my weight down, and it was very successful, right? But over the course of the following 17 years, I would chase that success because it wasn't really a sustainable way of eating for me, and the amount of exercise that it was taking to control my weight. All of those things kind of coupled together caused me to yo-yo. And so I went on this roller coaster for about 17, 18 years of my adult life.
Can we talk
The
about
Go
how
ahead.
much did you weigh? I mean, how much did
Yeah.
yeah, right
Yeah.
from the
So
beginning. Yeah, go
So
ahead.
right from the beginning, my weight had crept up about the year after high school graduation. So about 2003, 2004. My weight was at about 225 pounds on a 5'11" frame. And so it had creeped up, and that's when I engaged this Atkins diet, and through, rigorous dedication, running miles per day, I was able to get it down to 170 pounds. But once I gave up the no carb or low carb lifestyle, and that weight came back with a vengeance. And so I would go on this roller coaster every year where I'd be able to maintain it for 3 to 6 months out of the year, and I'd lose 25 pounds, but on the upswing I'd gain 30 or 35 pounds. And so it was really this roller coaster that led ultimately to my highest weight when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes back about 4 years ago. And my highest weight was 319 pounds at that time. And so I think a lot of people have experienced something similar where they've worked very hard to control their weight, but that upswing when they remove whatever extreme lifestyle modifications they've had to employ to lose the weight, the upswing is usually ticks back up higher, and so this just ravages somebody's metabolic system, and really in most cases requires some sort of medical intervention for long-term success.
Okay, so that's the physical. I mean, that is quite a huge roller coaster, winding up to be 300 plus pounds after going through all of that. But okay, so what was happening emotionally? I mean, because back,
Yeah.
well, I'm not going to explain it. Tell us.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's obviously an emotional element to all of this. I think the hardest part for me was when I was losing weight, Kathryn. I felt like a successful person. I felt acceptance from the people around me. I got lots of compliments on the way that I was looking. And, for me, those comments always kind of hit the wrong way. I know they were always well intended, but it always left me wondering, when I'm at a higher weight, am I worth less to these people? Is my physical appearance something that is constantly under their microscope? And really that stuff kind of gets in your head and starts to play games with you, and really, if you're not careful, can start to really affect your self-worth and your self-image. And so that certainly was part of my story, on that roller coaster, and something that I've had to do a good bit of work to sort of untangle.
Well, there is a stigma
Mhm.
attached
Of
to
course.
it, right? The stigma that it's a cultural thing too, don't you think
Mhm.
so?
Yeah.
People look at people who are overweight or obese and they say, oh, well, that person doesn't have control of him or herself, or
Right.
yeah, they're out of control. And so let's,
Yeah.
that's this, yeah, go ahead.
I'd love to unpack that a little bit, because I
Yeah.
think this is one of the biggest misunderstandings and misconceptions about people living with obesity. Now, we're painting with very broad brushes. Obviously, this is my own experience and the experience that I have with my community. But yes, you're exactly right. I like to refer to it as there's a social currency in being thin, right? Because there's this idea that people who don't struggle with obesity or metabolic dysfunction are doing something with sheer willpower that people living with obesity just haven't been able to wrangle, right? Or conjure up. And it's really a false understanding of what obesity and metabolic disease are. I think that in my own personal experience, when I look at the obesity community, or let's just call it, more narrowly, the on the pen community, sort of this community that we've built online of people getting treatment for obesity, is that these are people who have tried everything, who have white knuckled their entire way through life. Um, Again, on this roller coaster of extremes, right? Which is sort of fueled and fed by a culture that values thinness, that is fueled by a culture that then sells the idea of thinness, whether it's through supplements or fad diets, or gosh, I remember growing up, and perhaps you can identify with this, Kathryn, just standing in the checkout aisle of the grocery store and looking at the magazine covers and just thinking, everything that I see is so far, in terms of body image, so far away from what I look like. Gosh, I must be worth less than people that are able to obtain a certain physique. And so people are willing to go to great and extreme lengths if they think that that something is going to work to sort of help them get to that ideal body image. And so
Talking about the grocery store, I think I'm one of those who are guilty. And I've been on, especially as a teenager, I guess, stuffing and starving and that kind of stuff.
mhm,
But looking in people's carts to see what they're eating, like,
yeah.
yeah. And, I'm waiting in line and I'm just observing, well, how, are they getting good food? Are they not? Or,
Yeah, what
yeah,
what does somebody that looks like that eat to get that way?
exactly.
I think
Yeah.
that's a normal sort of human response to seeing someone that carries extra weight, right? Is like, how did they get there? I think it's a natural curiosity. And gosh, that's a big one to unpack. And interestingly, as somebody who lives in a larger body, it kind of cuts both ways too, because you kind of see people who are eating, who are thin, who are in thinner bodies, and you do the same thing. You're like, what are they getting? What are they eating that I'm not? Or what am I eating that they're not, that's causing me to be the way that I am? And at the end of the day, certainly there is a way to get overweight, and that would be to load your cart up with foods that are sort of reckless in terms of their caloric content or fat and sugar density and all of those things. But by and large, my own personal experience, and I think the experience of many others, is that that's one of the frustrations about living with obesity is oftentimes we're eating the same things, and oftentimes, you know, we're avoiding things that what I am using air quotes here, you can't see me, but normal people eat, right?
Yeah.
I think it's normal for someone to go to a restaurant and to enjoy a indulgent meal because you're at a restaurant, you're out and about. But if you're somebody who's living with obesity, oftentimes you're the one in a group of people who's ordering a Caesar salad, right? While everyone else is ordering the pasta or whatever may be being served up on the menu. And so I think, you know,
So you
certainly,
leave the restaurant, the great restaurant, the good restaurant,
right.
and then you go home and eat more than you would have eaten at the restaurant.
It could be the case. That could be the case. But I think at the end of the day, what people fail to understand is once you have a certain level of metabolic dysfunction, and this is where it gets into sort of some of the medications that are used to treat this. Once you get into a certain level of metabolic dysfunction, what people fail to understand is there's a tremendous amount of hormonal dysregulation that's going on. In other words, the way that your body is processing the food that you eat is different because of the hormone dysregulation. The signaling that's going on between your gut and your brain to signal satiety is broken, and so in some cases, yeah, you are eating more when you get home, but I think in a lot of cases it's that upswing, right? I can think of so many examples over the course of my life where I went to a function or I went to a restaurant with friends, and friends that perhaps were in, you know, normal sized bodies or living at a normal weight for their height. It's not that I wouldn't. It's not that I would go home and then indulge more or stop at the gas station and, you know, eat a candy bar on the way home. It was that I would restrict for months on end and I would eat the Caesar salad. But then when I went back on the upswing and I wasn't eating Caesar salads and I would eat those normal foods, it's like your body just does not respond the same way. It's you've put yourself into sort of the starvation mode for a period of time, and now your body just wants to pack that on. And I'm not trying um to dissuade anybody from believing that the idea of calories in, calories out matters, and certainly that people at higher weights are consuming more calories. That's certainly the case over the when you zoom out and look at over the long term. You know, it's just sort of physics. But at the same time, there is this other part of it where the yo-yo dieting, the toxic food culture, I think there are a lot of things that are playing into it. Genetics, your body is simply not processing the meal that you're eating the same way that the person next to you is eating. So there's it's multifactorial, right? That is leading to this dysregulation in the signaling of satiation, satiety, and the way that your body processes the foods and the macronutrients that you eat.
Dave, is there a test to measure your metabolic dysfunction? Like if you go into the
Sure.
doctor's office and you you know go to a general practitioner and they take blood tests and
Mhm.
whatever they do, can you measure that? Is it measurable? Like you can,
Yeah, in
yeah,
some
go
ways,
ahead.
yes, yes. So there's not like one test, one metabolic dysfunction test, but there are signals that they'll look at in say a normal metabolic panel where they're checking your liver function and they're checking your kidney function and they're checking your A1C, which is going to be your blood sugars as measured over like a 3 month period. All of these things sort of put together are like puzzle pieces that a clinician can use to sort of piece together whether you have metabolic dysfunction. One of the biggest contributors to metabolic dysfunction is going to be your liver and your liver health. So oftentimes they'll look at liver enzymes and elevated liver enzymes. They'll look at your vitamin D levels and all these things that relate back to your liver. And if they see things are out of whack on there, then it may signal you know, a closer look at your liver through some sort of a scan, and where they'll be able to identify oftentimes that people are living with, for example, fatty liver disease, and oftentimes this goes hand in hand with a prediabetes or a type 2 diabetes diagnosis. And once the liver is sort of, you know, packing on fat, it's not processing You're not processing food and macronutrients and sugars the same way that you once were, which taxes other systems of the body. And ultimately, when you talk about type 2 diabetes, you're talking about insulin resistance. And so insulin is another thing that they look at. In the past, one of the biggest signals that doctors would look for was, what is your A1C, right? Let's see. Are you creeping up into that pre-diabetes range? But what they are learning to look at now are the insulin levels, because if you put two people side by side and they have the same A1C, let's say they have a 5.2 A1C, that doesn't mean that they have the same situation going on in their body. For one person, and this is a very crude analogy, but one person, it may be taking a thimble full of insulin to maintain that level of A1C, while others may have insulin resistance and it's taking, a gallon of insulin to do it. Again, crude analogy, but the point is, insulin as a hormone is what brings your blood sugars down, but it brings your blood sugars down because its number one job is to store away energy. So if you're somebody who maybe has a normal A1C, but your insulin levels are high, you have an overabundance of the hormone in your body that is designed to pack away energy, and ultimately that leads to weight gain. So if you're somebody who is struggling to lose weight, but your A1C is good, it is highly plausible that you have some insulin resistance, and insulin resistance is ultimately, the driver of type 2 diabetes.
Now, you talked about there are genetic factors too, like that come into play. I mean, there's a whole puzzle here as you're describing it, right? And that contribute to obesity. What about the last, or maybe two generations ago? I'm just kind of put this in a timeline or a time frame. Like if you look at, like, say in the 1950s, and high school, I'm sure you've been asked this question a lot, but you look at a graduation from high school or college,
Sure.
and everybody is like, maybe not, they're not skinny and they're not fat and they're not
Right.
obese. They're just kind of like what we call like a normal. I mean, I'm using it. I don't know what other word to use. You know what I mean? Just
Right.
there aren't the extremes. How do we explain
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. I think so much of this is continuing to be unpacked and understood by science, right? And one of the things that I'll go to is just sort of this idea of GLP-1 medications, right? So when we talk about GLP-1 medications, the one that people really are aware of is Ozempic, right? But GLP-1, as you led into the discussion, there is glucagon like peptide 1. It's simply a hormone that your body makes in response to nutrient intake, right? And so there's some way that these hormones are being dysregulated. So, for example, there are studies that look at the gut bacteria of type 2 diabetics. Okay, so you're gonna have to stay with me for a second because we're gonna get a little bit sciencey
We're
here.
not going anywhere. We are here. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is okay. So this is sort of the idea of to your question, how do you look at, say, a picture of people on the beach from the 1960s and you don't see a single overweight person, or you look at one today and you go, wow, there's what happened, right? Well, when they look at the gut bacteria of type 2 diabetics, there's an overabundance, like orders of magnitude higher, of certain gut bacteria. The byproduct of this gut bacteria that is in an overabundance is this enzyme called DPP4. So it's just, sort of what comes out the other end of this bacteria in your gut, and it's in an overabundance. This DPP4, its number one job is to destroy these nutrient stimulated hormones, right? And so when you talk about glucagon like peptide 1, GLP-1s, or what Ozempic mimics, you are talking in type 2 diabetics about an overabundance of the bacteria that destroys your naturally occurring glucagon like peptide 1. And those hormones that your gut helps your body produce as it senses the foods that you're eating are the ones that are signaling to your brain, hey, I'm full. You don't need to eat anymore. Or it's also responsible for how quickly your body actually digests the food that you just ate. So when you eat a meal, how long does it stick with you? How long are you getting maybe that stomach feeling of, hey, I'm full because I just ate a meal? Actually, you're actually processing the food faster because you don't have the proper levels of the hormone that are slowing that gastric emptying, right? And it also plays into the release of insulin and the efficiency with which your body releases insulin in response to nutrient intake. So something is happening. It's a long-winded, sciencey way of saying something is happening to the bacteria in our gut that is actually influencing the endogenous or naturally occurring hormones that our body normally makes and interfering with that signaling. And there are a lot of hypotheses about what this is. And like I was saying earlier, I believe it's multifactorial what is leading up to this, but I think you could point to a number of things, chemicals potentially that are in our food that were not in our food in the 60s. You could look at the idea of the increase in some medications like antibiotics, which certainly have an influence over your gut bacteria. And then on the side of it where we're looking at genetics, they're starting to understand more why people are more dispositioned to respond negatively maybe to that sort of toxic food environment that we're living in. There are different things that they can look at, like your if you have single gene obesity, which is rare and early onset and severe. There's genes like MC4R, LEPR, POMC, and PCSK1, which are all involved. And if a child is severely obese before the age of 5, a doctor might order a test to look at those. And these are clinical grade tests that require like a referral or a geneticist or an endocrinologist to be involved. But those are some hormones that they can look at. There are also things like polygenic risk scores, things that they can look at. So there are some people that are maybe more predispositioned to be vulnerable to the changes that happen physiologically when you're exposed to certain toxins or medications or things like this. So it's not, this isn't something that science has completely unpacked, but thankfully, since we are looking at obesity as a chronic relapsing multifactorial disease, science is able to dig into some of this. And only now are we at the advent of really treating it, because it's only in my lifetime that the medical community has started to see obesity as a disease instead of just a physical state that somebody has chosen for themselves.
Yeah. And I think, we only have a few minutes left. And as you say, this is just the beginning for the medical community to accept it, to accept obesity as a disease. It would seem to me that those people who are someone like yourself or many of us need to have support, peer support, people who support them and helping them to manage this health condition. And that's also critical as you're beginning to, to decide to take medication or to whatever your decisions are.
Right. It's so important for people to have a good relationship with their primary care doctor, and that their primary care doctor, if there's somebody who is living with overweight, is well studied in this idea of obesity. Listen, obesity affects so many systems of the body. It affects every system of the body. So whether we're talking about heart failure, or we're talking about autoimmune conditions, or whether we're talking about other comorbidities like sleep apnea, which can affect your entire body. All of these things are really things that can stem out from living with overweight or obesity. And unfortunately, we live in an era where, again, we're at the advent of the science, and not all doctors understand this yet. And so it's very important, if you're somebody who lives with overweight, that you're connecting with a doctor who is perhaps obesity medicine board certified, who can help you sort of navigate what kind of treatment. And then on the community side, communities like the one that we've built at On the Pen is so critical to just, connect with people who have similar lived experience, so that you don't feel so isolated and alone, because so many of us have fought, the whole reason that I wrote the book, Decoding GLP-1, a guide for friends and family of those on the pen, is that there's so much shame and stigma around living in a larger body, that what I found very quickly once I started creating content in this space is that people were afraid and ashamed to even tell their loved ones, their closest loved ones, their spouses in some cases, that they had sought treatment for obesity, because there's so much stigma wrapped around it. And really, what we live and aim to do at On the Pen is just to educate people so that they don't feel alone.
On the pen. We have 1 minute left. So much to talk about, and I'm so glad you ended with that, because not only does obesity affect every organ in your body, it affects every relationship that you have, family, friends, children, community. And so which is, I think, really important to understand. So on the pen, and the title of Dave Knapp, Knapp, Decoding GLP-1, a guide for friends and family of those on the pen. Just give us quick a website. Well, I guess if we just go to On the Pen, right?
Yeah, onthepen.com is the gateway to everything that we do. We focus a little bit more on the news than anything else, because the news is what sort of is driving the future of treatment, right? So we just want people to be informed, to be able to have more competent and confident conversations with their doctors. That's what On the Pen is all about, and certainly appreciate the time to share a little bit about what we're doing today.
Yeah, thanks so much. Well, you certainly enlightened me, and I know you enlightened my listeners, and we'll be on the pen with you.
Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
it. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Kathryn.
Dave. Dave Knapp.